At the end of this video, you'll learn how to navigate your career in this time of coronavirus. So keep watching. If this is your first time watching the video, welcome. My name is Paul Sohn, and in this channel, I talk about the intersection of your calling and your career. How are you managing your career during this COVID-19 outbreak? I was just reading the news today that over 40 million Americans have filed for unemployment claims. And now if you think about that, that's more than just the entire population in Poland. Now this is a really interesting time we're living in from a career perspective. It's really created this new historical divide. There's BC and there's AC, before Corona and after Corona. And whether you're a recent grad or a seasoned professional, this crisis has just created a lot of uncertainty, fear of the unknown, and there's more questions as it relates to the direction of your career. More importantly, in this world after Corona, managing your career will be fundamentally disrupted. Now think about this. In the previous generation, people thought of their career from a clear path of upward linear movement. First, you figured out what you needed to do, then you went to college to study it, and then you got a job, and you moved up corporate ladder, and then you retired. But over a generation, there's been a massive change. The modern career trajectory isn't necessarily a climb to a destination, but rather it's been a continuum. In other words, nonlinear careers have become the new normal. So with that in mind, let me share 3 ways on how you can take charge of your career in this new normal. Number 1, align your career to your calling. The fact is, most people never discover their calling in life. Henry David Thoreau once said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." Most people at work simply are just going through the motions. And it may be counterintuitive, but difficult times actually can serve as a catalyst. It actually pushes you to ask deeper questions and seek greater meaning in life. In fact, researchers at the Stanford Business School and the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management found that the negative experiences may actually have an unexpected benefit of enhancing your well-being. And that's actually one of the upsides of this crisis. It actually forces you to take a step back from your day-to-day and actually helps you to see your life from a 30,000 feet view. And honestly, I think there's never been a better time than now to actually start seriously thinking about your calling. And by the way, when I use the word calling, it's not this narcissistic self-developmental activity. Calling by definition is other-oriented. Calling implies there's a caller. And as someone who's trying to figure out what are we called to do, we first have to ask who is actually calling me in the first place. So let me share 4 questions with you that will help you find that alignment of your calling and your career. I call it finding your sweet spot. If you think about a sweet spot, if you ever played tennis, there's this sweet spot in your tennis racket and you hit the tennis ball to your tennis racket, the maximum point of contact is what's called a sweet spot. And as I was playing tennis, I had this aha moment. If there's a sweet spot in a tennis racket, when God created us, didn't He also create a sweet spot for our lives? So let me share 4 questions that will actually help you think about this concept of a sweet spot. First and foremost, think about your life story. The fact that who you are today is not a coincidence. Draw an entire life map of your life. The pros, the cons, the highs and ups, and that's going to really challenge you to really think about your life from a 30,000 perspective. Second is to determine what is my holy discontent. There's passions and then there's holy discontent, right? Holy discontent is when you look at this universe, this broken world we're living in, and there's some aspect of this world that breaks your heart. What is that? The third element is identifying your personality. fact is every person is wired differently, right? And there are tools like Enneagram, there are tools like Myers-Briggs, and actually having a actual self-awareness of your personality is gonna really help you to know, is this career the right fit for me? And lastly, identify what are your gifts, what are your natural strengths, and also the skill sets that you've actually built because of your work, because of the many hours that you probably invested into. So when you look at the 4 elements, the question is, what does the intersection of these 4 different elements actually look like? I call that finding your sweet spot. In fact, I actually wrote a book called The Quarter Life Calling, Pursuing Your God-Given Purpose in Your 20s. And at the end of each chapter of the book, I have actual assessments, exercises, and activities that you can actually go through that's going to really help you on this journey. So if you want to know more about that, I put a link under the description here. So please definitely look into it if you're interested in that. The second tip is to actually become a generalist in an ever-changing job market. In this new normal, the time of the specialist is over. In fact, we're entering into an age of the generalist. David Epstein, who wrote a groundbreaking book called Range, in this book he talks about how the traditional path to success has actually emphasized excelling in a single discipline rather than being a generalist. But the author says it's actually better to be a jack of all trades and master of none. Epstein also dives into this whole science of diverse experiences, which contradicts the idea that we all heard of, the 10,000 hour rule, which was widely popularized by Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. One of the biggest takeaways for me from this book was this whole idea of a kind world and a wicked world. A kind world is an environment in which there are repeating patterns. In the kind world, the feedback is almost provided in an instant. So chess, if you think about it, is a kind world. You move a piece of the chess board and your opponent makes the move in direct relation to your own. So you're thinking ahead and have set up a series of moves to lead them into a trap. If you think about that, a lot of other sports and actually playing different instruments fall under this kind world. However, the reality of the world is not kind, it's actually a wicked world where most things are not solely patterns repeating over and over, but where things are not so clear. The rules of the game are not known ahead of time, and the patterns are actually harder to see. For example, the HR manager lives in a wicked world. You don't know whether the person you're hiring actually will perform his or her potential based on the interview itself. So why is this concept important? Because the world is changing at a rapid pace. Listen to this statistic. 65% of children entering elementary school today will ultimately end up working in a job that does not exist today. In this new normal, you may not be the best at something, but if you have multiple things you are good at, you will actually win bigger. Now, the third way is to become a lifelong agile learner. A generation ago, people who were illiterate were those who couldn't read or write. But in this new normal, the illiterate are those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. The future of work is all about learning. In the past, we learned in order to work. Now, in the future, we must work to learn. Now, the average lifespan is growing. And if you couple that with the rapid technological change, these new circumstances are challenging the way we work. A generation ago, the half-life of a skill was 26 years. Today, it's actually 4.5 years, and it's dropping. In the new normal, robots, AI, machine learning are taking over our logical and rational thinking. I believe that the only job security that we have today is our lifelong commitment to personal development. It would be safe to say, in fact, that we're actually entering into an imagination economy where intuitive and creative thinking create socio-economic value. Now just check out the top 10 skills from the World Economic Forum today. So if you're like me and you're stuck at home during this COVID-19 crisis, this is a time to actually invest more time in building these skill sets. So if I were you, I'll be focusing on growing what's called the 3 C's: creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration. Here's my challenge to you. What if you could invest 5 to 10% in self-development? Just remember that the long-term consistency will trump short-term intensity. The fourth and final way is to reconnect with our contacts. This pandemic that we're in requires social distancing, which makes it really difficult to network. But the golden rule when it comes to networking is to mobilize our weak ties. Now, weak ties, these are relationships where you have with people that you probably don't know really well, but this actually maximizes our chances of learning things that we don't know already. Studies actually show that distant connections are often better placed to offer you new perspectives and honest advice than your nearest and dearest. However, they're also maybe less motivated to help you. So the key is to actually leverage what I called your dormant ties. These are people that you were once close with, but have been in contact maybe in the last 3 or 4 years or so. So here's my final thoughts for you. I understand many of you might have been unemployed, you may have been furloughed, and you're just maybe at the risk of losing a job, or maybe you're simply in a job that it's just, you feel unengaged, you feel like you don't know how to navigate it. But I just want to share with you what C.S. Lewis said, that life with God is not immunity from difficulties, but it's finding peace in difficulties. And I just want to let you know that what defines you is not based on what you do. You're defined by who you are in Christ. And God says that you are a beloved son and daughter of the Most High King. That your identity is rooted in your relationship with Christ. So it may be this hard, difficult time you're in, but my encouragement and my hope for you is to look your eyes upon Jesus, to focus your gaze on Him, because He is our caller, and He is calling you, He's leading you, and He's guiding you. He's our good shepherd.